Bruchim habayim. Welcome. It's Hebrew. It's how we say welcome in Hebrew. Welcome everyone to the first annual Judaic Studies lecture series. I'm Dr. Ken Hansen, and this is actually a brand new lecture series now that the Judaic Studies program, of which I'm the coordinator, is officially part of the UCF History Department. So we're in a whole new environment now. We are part of History Department, and this is our kickoff Judaic Studies lecture series as part of history. Now, I'm very, very pleased and proud to kick things off with my good friend and colleague, Professor Zev.Garber, who's come in all the way from Los Angeles. But before I quite get to introducing Zev, we'd agreed that I would share a few things in general on our topic today, just to, shall we say, set the tone of what we're going to be talking about. A Jewish response to Jesus. Oy vey! A Jewish response to Jesus. Engaging the Gospels. We're going to be engaging the Gospels this afternoon. I do quite a bit of public speaking here and there, including at UCF Life Group. I was in another venue just a few weeks ago, and someone came up to me, having explained somehow during the course of my remarks that I am officially MOT, which means member of the tribe. I am a Ger Tzedek. I am a quote-unquote righteous convert to Judaism. It just slipped out in my remarks. And stereotype. Hansen, it's Scandinavian ancestry. But after my remarks, someone from the audience came up and asked me, "Are you a Messianic Jew?" You must be a Messianic Jew. And my response was, all Jews are Messianic. And it's true. All Jews are Messianic. After all, Messianism is a Jewish concept. Where did it come from? Judaism, Judaism, Judaism. Judaism gave birth to the concept of the Messiah, to the concept that there will someday be peace on earth. Can we imagine? This is a very Jewish idea, that history isn't just random. That's an explosive concept. In other societies, other places in the world, there is a notion that history isn't particularly going anywhere. This goes round and round in circles, and there's nothing wrong with that. We should all just go out and hug a tree and be one with the environment, and wherever it goes, it goes. What's wrong with that? It's a much easier way to look at things. Judaism places this unbelievable burden on us. The idea that not only is history going somewhere, but we are responsible to bring about where it goes. It's on us to bring a better day, to bring peace on earth. That's Messianism. That someday, said the ancient Israelite prophets, the lion shall lay down with the lamb. Now, there's a place in Jerusalem called the Biblical Zoo, mind you. It is. The Biblical Zoo, all the animals from the Bible. In one cage, they actually have a lion and a lamb in the same cage. And somebody asked the zookeeper, how do you manage this? The zookeeper, Israeli, responded, it's no problem. Every morning we put in a new lamb. But the lion shall lay down with the lamb at some glorious day in the future. And the Jewish people shall return to their homeland. Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. That's all part of this concept of Messianism. History is going somewhere. Best expression of that I ever heard was a single phrase in a book called A History of God. Maybe you've read this book. The blows of history are not random. And that grabbed me. That's Judaism in a nutshell. The blows of history are not random. And an anointed king will one day sit on the long-abandoned throne of David. That's Messianism. An anointed king. Well, how did a person become king in ancient times, in ancient Israel? How was a person made king? There was a ceremony, as even there is today, when a person is made king or queen. But a priest or a prophet would take a horn of oil, and you see it depicted here in an ancient mosaic, and literally pour it on the head of the person selected to be monarch of the land. To be anointed is how a person became king. Well, the Hebrew word for Messiah is, in fact, Mashiach. And there it is in the Hebrew, Mashiach. What does Mashiach mean? It means anointed. Anointed one. The verb mashach, to anoint. Mashiach is an anointed one, as in one made king. That's all it means. Of which Messiah is a rather awkward English transliteration of the Hebrew word Mashiach, because for whatever reason Westerners cannot pronounce very well. So Mashiach becomes Messiah. Now, when we look back across the history of the Jewish world, there have in fact been many Messiahs. Here is a book, published book, titled 50 Jewish Messiahs. Did you know there were that many? 50 Jewish Messiahs. In ancient times, there was the famous Shimon ben Kosiba, who was renamed Shimon bar Kochba, which means son of the star in Aramaic. And he was proclaimed, in fact, to be the Mashiach, the anointed one, the one who will sit on King David's throne. Proclaimed Mashiach by none other than the great Rabbi Akiva, who believed this. There was, in the Middle Ages, the 1600s specifically, a fellow named Shabbatai Tzvi, who also made messianic claims as a Jew, and drew an enormous proportion of the Jewish world to this claim. Some have estimated that at one point, in fact, it may well be that the majority of Jews worldwide actually believed that Shabbatai Tzvi was the Mashiach, the Messiah. And all over the world, Jews began selling their property, abandoning their homes, buying tickets on ships bound for Palestine. Because what will the Messiah do? He'll bring all the Jews back to the land of Israel. More recently, in the 20th century, we have the Hasidic Rebbe, founder of the Chabad movement, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who has had and continues to have many devotees, even within the Chabad organization. It's quite controversial, but who have made the claim, and yes, still make the claim, that Menachem Mendel Schneerson was and is the Mashiach. Some claim that he will rise from the dead, in fact. As Jews, they're making this claim. What about Jesus? What about Jesus? Can a Jew believe in Jesus in kosher fashion and remain a Jew? What about Shabbatai Tzvi? What about Schneerson? What about Bar Kochba? What about 50 Jewish messiahs? There's one more. What's wrong? Well, I suppose it depends on what believe means. Believe in Jesus. If a Jew believes in Jesus in the same way as believing that Menachem Mendel Schneerson is the Messiah, well, who can say that that person is a bad Jew? Who can say that a member of Chabad who believes fervently that Schneerson is or was the Mashiach is not a good Jew? They may be a little Meshuggah. What's the problem? It's this. But the worship of Jesus worship of Jesus, Jesus as divine, is considered in Judaism by this term, Avodah Zarah. With an ayin, slicha. Avodah Zarah, false worship, idolatry. It's idolatry. And that disqualifies a person, can disqualify a person even from identifying as Jewish. Now, there's a good bit of contemporary Jesus research out there that suggests that Jesus himself never actually claimed divinity. That divine claims for Jesus are something that were read into the narrative of Jesus many years after the fact. When we look at the actual words of Jesus, even as recorded in the Gospels, did he go around saying, I am divine? Did he go around saying, I am God? Did he not draw people's attention to the Father, even in the greatest of his prayers, the Lord's Prayer, Avinu, our Father? This is very Jewish. So now that's an issue that modern scholars debate. Now, if Messianic Jews, and there are many Messianic Jews today, that's what we must address, if they might perhaps reframe their theology so as to accept Jesus in the same way that a Jew accepts Schneerson, even if they're a bit mashoga, considered by the bulk of the Jewish community, should they be disqualified as Jews? Should they not Jewish anymore? If they do not make such a claim of divinity? That's a question. That's an issue. Now, Rabbi Dan Kohn-Sherbach, well-known rabbi, writes this. Modern Jewish movements embrace a wide range of theological and ideological perspectives. There is simply no consensus among non-Orthodox Jews concerning the central tenets of the faith. Neither is there any agreement about Jewish observance. True. There is no agreement about Jewish observance. We know this. Nonetheless, these disparate branches of modern Judaism are united in their rejection of Messianic Judaism as an authentic expression of the Jewish faith. Though the adherents of these branches of the tradition differ over the most fundamental features of the Jewish religion, even including belief in God, they have joined together in excluding Messianic Judaism from the range of legitimate interpretations of Jewish heritage. Does a Jew need to believe in God? No. Many Jews do not. Are atheist Jews still Jews? Absolutely. Are agnostic Jews still Jews? Absolutely. What about Buddhist Jews? Are they accepted as Jews? Yes. For Messianic Jews, such a rejection is baffling. Why should they be perceived as the sole inauthentic Jewish movement in contemporary society, given that they believe in God, view Torah, 5 books of Moses, as divinely revealed and remain loyal to Israel? Even Jews who follow Eastern beliefs are not systematically removed from Jewish life, but are in fact still welcomed into the community. If conservative Jews deny the belief in Torah Misinai, that is, the Torah was divinely inspired to Moses on Mount Sinai. If Reform Jews reject the authority of the law, do Reform Jews reject the authority of the Torah? No. Well, actually, one is not bound in Reform Judaism to keep the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. If conservative Jews deny the belief of Torah Misinai, Reform Jews reject the authority of the law, Reconstructionist Jews adopt a non-theistic interpretation of the faith. Non-theistic, that is without God. Here is Judaism without God. And humanistic Jews cease to use the word God in their liturgy. Why should Messianic Jews alone be universally vilified? And he asks these questions. Jewish pluralists argue that Messianic Judaism should be seen merely as one among many expressions of the Jewish faith, alongside Hasidism, Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism, Reform Judaism, Reconstructionist Judaism, and Humanist Judaism. Messianic Judaism offers a pathway through the Jewish heritage. Admittedly, unlike the other branches of Judaism, this movement is firmly rooted in the belief that Yeshua, that is Jesus, is the long-awaited Redeemer of Israel. Yet, such a belief is in principle no more radical than the Reconstructionist and Humanist rejection of a supernatural deity. Indeed, as we have seen in many respects, Messianic Jews are more theistically oriented and more Torah observant even than their counterparts within the conservative and reform movements. Now that is something to think about. And that leads us to this. Jewish pluralists know that it will not be easy for the Jewish community to come face to face with itself. Messianic Judaism can evoke from the Jewish community a greater awareness of the need for acceptance and tolerance in the modern age. Rather than engaging in bitter and acrimonious criticism of one another's religious viewpoints, the Jewish people need a new framework for harmonious living, one which will serve as a remedy for the bitter divisions that have split the community into warring factions since the Enlightenment, including Messianic Judaism. It's the only reasonable starting point for inter-community relations in the 21st century. But still, the worship of Jesus, Jesus as divine, presents a real problem as Avodah Zarah. After all, what do we read in the Ten Commandments? Lo yeh Elohim acherim al panai. You shall not have any other gods before you. It doesn't say that you have to believe in God. It just says that you won't have any other gods before this one. Therein lies the dilemma. Is belief in Jesus as divine idolatry? Should that bar Messianic Jews from engagement in the Jewish community? These things we have to cope with. That said, I want to segue into, again, my good friend and colleague, Professor Zev.Garber, who's been to UCF several times in the past, 3 times before already. This is his 4th visit, if I have it correct, who has always been as powerfully provocative as he is wise beyond his years. Whereas others are inclined to read from carefully prepared notes, as I often do, or in my case, PowerPoints, Zev simply holds forth with incredible erudition, interspersed with the trove of what many of us devoted acolytes refer to as Garberisms, of which I'm sure we will encounter at least a few today. Just a little about his considerable background. Zev Garber is Emeritus Professor and Chair of Jewish Studies at Los Angeles Valley College and has served as Visiting Professor in Religious Studies at the University of California at Riverside and as President of the National Association of Professors of Hebrew. He attended Bar-Ilan University in Israel and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Hebrew from Hunter College. He studied Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac, and Ugaritic at UCLA Graduate School. He earned a Master of Arts degree and completed his coursework for a PhD in religion at the University of Southern California. He joined the faculty at Los Angeles Valley College in 1970 and within a year established a Jewish Studies major. As of 2016, he is Professor Emeritus and Chair of Jewish Studies. He taught Jewish Studies at the University of California, Riverside, and at the American University. He's recognized as a pioneer of Jewish Studies at 2-year public colleges. His scholarship embraces Jewish Studies pedagogy, Shoah, that is Holocaust theology, the Jewish Jesus, and interfaith dialogue. His advocacy of the term Shoah and not Holocaust as the term of record for the murder of European Jewry during World War II has placed him among the first to advocate careful terminology to describe the Jewish genocide. He is the presenter of hundreds of academic articles and reviews and was the subject of an honorary volume entitled, edited by Stephen L. Jacobs and entitled Maven in Blue Jeans. Maven in Blue Jeans, a flight shrift in honor of Zev Garber, 2009. Without further ado, let's warmly welcome Professor Dr. Zev Garber.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you able to hear me? Okay, first of all, I thank you, Ken, for your kind remarks, and Moshe Pelly, who's sitting here, who was courageous enough to invite me back in the day. It's 4 times I've been back here at UCF, and I appreciate every time I visit. This time around, it's certainly been different for me to see a whole new campus, and to walk and 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 walk. And I've seen people walk around with umbrellas and saying, where's the rain, and where's the walk, and when's it going to end, etc. Anyway, something learned, something new. It's basically a contrary concept to what's found in Kohelet, in Chadash Tach Lashamesh. There's nothing new under the sun. But I guess if the sun doesn't shine, rain does come, so I guess there is something new for somebody who comes from the hot, bare environment of the Sefton Valley. I think what I need to do is give you some background to why the topic came up. Its particular importance with the emphasis that Ken gave to Messianic Jews, etc. I happen to come to the whole topic of Jesus from a much different perspective than you probably would think. My background is a yeshiva background. By that I mean a traditional Jewish orthodoxy. I can remember my first grades in Yeshiva Israel Salanta in the Bronx, New York, which is now part of the Riverdale, I understand, combined school with another school. But probably one of the earliest memories I have dealing with Shoah theology and also dealing with Christians are the rabbis that taught me who spoke Yiddish. I went to Yeshiva where Yiddish was part of our day instruction. I come from a home where the Mama Lashon was spoken very freely, with a Zayda, with a grandfather who spoke not one word of English. I discovered later by years that my grandmother was the first Spick I ever met. The word Spick back in New York was a term for Puerto Ricans. I then discovered, as you look so astute at me right now, that the word Spick is nothing more than Spanish and Indian Caucasian. And then I discovered my bubby, Chana, was the first Spick in my life. Thanks to Mr. Webster and a dictionary term, no Spick in English is the origin of the term Spick. Has nothing to do with Puerto Ricans, has nothing to do with this, has nothing to do with that. That's it, no Spicker. Anyway, for the no Spicker grandmother, I basically was introduced to the rabbi that once taught me something, and as his hand went over the page, as you would say, an aleph is an aleph, a beis is a beis, a gimel is a gimel, and as his hand began to rise up a little bit, the sleeve, I saw a tattoo. I basically looked at that tattoo, I said, Rebbe is a Tudish. Rabbi, it's forbidden. What are you walking around with a tattoo? It was at that moment, you're so much older than I am, that the rabbi's hand went upon my head and said, a bracha on the kepala, velvela, a bracha on the kepala. A blessing on your head, velvela. You're right, a tattoo is forbidden. However, it is my telephone number, and my telephone number I forget. I've got to call home. E.T. Steven Spielberg, who is a product of Holocaust survivors, I might add, no doubt has extraterrestrial, that whole field of tremendous importance. No doubt, I gotta go home, is a typical European shtetl mentality of never to forget the Shoah, and the tattoo is there, and you don't erase it. Even though you could, you don't erase it. You've got to remember, you've got to go home. Please keep in mind that lesson. It comes back and will haunt me in a few moments. In any case, part of the discussion of why we're doing the topic today, and I asked Ken to bring the copy of one of my volumes on Jesus, and you'll notice that the very cover has the Jewish Jesus, and then the subtitle, Revelation. Revelation is that which is revealed, which we'll call divine inspiration or divine coding, whatever. Reflection is what goes on at universities. This book was published by Purdue University Press. My contact with Purdue goes over many years. I'm now the editor emeritus of their journal, an outstanding journal in Jewish studies, which has the title Interdisciplinary Study or something like that, Jewish Studies, called Shofar. Just retired, or they told me to retire after 18 years of being the editor, but at least my name is emeritus editor. And finally, the word reclamation. It's that word reclamation that caught the attention of the Jerusalem Post, and one of the reviews they ran on that particular book, necessary for me to call this to your attention, if I can find it here among my papers, in which the review was published online, and Jerusalem Post picked up on that particular review. It had, as a word, this particular picture of the book, the Jewish Jesus with the word reclamation, and the reviewer very cogently pointed out that the reclamation that Zev.Garber is referencing there is not reclaiming Jesus by Christians, but rather reclaiming Jesus by Jews. There is a particular Chagall painting that accompanied all this. I thought I had it here. I do have it somewhere. In any case, it's a picture of Jesus with phylacteries on his head at the crucifixion, which has in the background King of the Jews, and that's very significant. I need you to focus on those two images, and please forgive me as I go around these papers here and see if I have a copy of it. Why so? Because the visible, is very important in some of the comments I want to make. Do I have it here? No, I do not. Anyway, try to imagine a Jesus on the cross stretched out. On his forehead, there is a phylactery, known in my language as tefillin. Phylactery is the Greek word. Phylactery is the Gentile word. Phylactery, unless it's properly understood, comes across as Jews wear their prophylactics every morning and pray to God. The word prophylactic and the word phylactery happen to be related. It truly suggests a container and that which is found therein. But I suspect that's why I like to use the Hebrew, or in this case the Aramaic phrase, for the phylactery called the tefillin. Jesus on the cross, the phylactery on his forehead. The other famous Chagall painting is Jesus on the cross with a prayer shawl, the prayer shawl which covers him according to the Torah in this particular portion that we selected for our book, and now the prayer shawl which is over the loins of Jesus and the famous crucifixion, several of them, which was done by Mark Chagall. The prayer shawl, I feel, should be shown to you in demonstration. I have in my hand a prayer shawl. It is not my choice that the black and the white happen to be the colors, suggesting, if you will, a sense of doom, a sense of destruction, and the whiteness is whiteness. Why not blue and white? Why not a blue and white talit or prayer shawl? Well, that's a bar mitzvah prayer shawl. Excuse me. Why not a multicolored prayer shawl, which I have at home? No different than the multicolored kippah on my head, suggesting there is no color, no distinction, that Jews and Judaism and its message includes all peoples, all races, ergo no blue and white, even multicolored and multicolored prayer shawl. The prayer shawl's significance is not in the coloring, the background, the sense of doom that's found therein, but the blessings recited. The shawl goes over one's shoulders, and essentially you go this way, you go that way, and then you kiss, if you say the blessing properly, the so-called fringes at the end. I want you to look very carefully at the prayer shawl I'm wearing. This is not my prayer shawl. My dad passed in Yerushalayim. He's buried in Jerusalem many years ago, and the prayer shawl was among his remaining object in the apartment which my sister and I had to clean out, and I decided that this is not going to go anywhere except home with me. Traditionally, in Orthodox Judaism, when you are buried, a male is buried with his prayer shawl wrapped in the shawl, as it were, with one understanding: you rip apart one of the fringes. Why so is going to be a lesson in Hebrew orthography, very necessary, and why we selected this particular picture, and why Jesus and the Jewishness of Jesus is a legitimate topic to be asked. Before I go even further, because I am one that will try to hit you over the head with all examples. My father was extremely Orthodox Jew. He was buried by a group of Hasidim known as the Zvila Hasidim, unlike the more popular group of Hasidim known as the Schneerson group of Chabad. And in all due respect, Ken, I'm afraid I need to make a correction. Rabbi Schneerson was not the founder of Chabad. He was the last of the dynasty, and there are no more successors of Rabbi Schneerson. Why so? A little Hasidic secret that you need to know. In Hasidic dynasties, a male child is necessary. If a male child is not born, then something is out of sync. So the Alter Rebbe, whoever the rabbi may be, marries his wife, and the wife can't bear children, or she gives birth to 5 daughters, or whatever the case may be. 5 daughters, my own niece has 5 daughters, and she still only bears daughters, so she still has children in her older age, which are now. It's possible that a child born is not a son. But in Hasidic dynasties, who is to be the melech there, who is to be the king, the sovereign, and carrying on the tradition, you need a male child. And so what goes on with the Satmar Hasidim, what goes on with the Baruch Hasidim, what goes on with all these Hasidic groups, based on the review I just did, Who Shall Protect Us, Who Shall Fight for Us, a major academic work which was recently reviewed by me for print in the American Academy of Religion, there is the understanding that the rabbi divorces his wife. After so many years of marriage, it's necessary. She cannot bear you, she cannot bear you, she cannot bear you a male child. Marry another woman. I'm 60 years old, I'm 50 years old, we get you a 20-year-old, a 15-year-old, an 18-year-old woman for the purpose of conception. This goes on in extreme orthodoxy, and I guess when you divorce and remarry, divorce, remarry, you somehow bear a child. And when you think you know it all, then there are exceptions. Perhaps the most notorious anti-Zionist group that I'm aware of, because of their anti-Zionism, is the Turret Cartel. The Turret Cartel is that element of the Satmar group of the Ottoman dynasty, which itself is now divided in Israel. And as a result, Rabbi Joe Teitelbaum lost his whole family, tragedy of everybody being lost, and then in his older age decided to remarry. Why so? Because marriage, one of the commandments of Judaism, is companionship in addition to fruition, in addition to bringing children in the world, companionship is necessary. So as a result of that, he arranged his old marriage because they felt the older rabbi should be remarried again. I want to remarry. And he then said to his followers, listen very carefully, if you don't accept my wife, then I and Mrs. Teitelbaum will take a war. The tragedy, not to me, of his Hasidim is that he married a Giora. He married a convert to Judaism, which for some of us, if you're a convert, I guess you're not as kosher as what was born with. Furthermore, the wife that he married had no problem shaving her hair, because that's what we French nuns do. A former French nun who had no problem shaving her hair, who fell into a Jewish circle, became so religious, so orthodox, so frum, she became the second wife and the last wife of Rabbi Joe Teitelbaum. To make it more personal, my father, I told you, was quite religious. At the Shiva of my father, there is a Jewish tradition. You're not supposed to study Torah. Why so? The dead are to be honored, and those who sit in Shiva in the morning are suspended from life. Cooking is done for them, preparations cooked for them, da-da-da-da. Visitors from the community came in to pay respect to my parents, to my father's deceased, and my mother who was sitting in the morning, and the children who came from America, myself and my sister. But the rabbi was Sevilla Hasidim, who buried my father. The rabbi's name was Rabbi Gedalia. He came in with black little, sneakers with white socks. That was their tradition as well, like the Satmar. And he sat by the velvet of a smoky yid, this type of thing. And then, mitzvah driven, in the middle of everything, a Hasidic rabbi said, what's with Jesus? What's with Yeshu? What's with Jesus? A Hasidic Rebbe, after my father being buried, could not talk to me Torah, went into Chol, went into something secular, and asked, what's with Jesus? Did he say it to be insulting? I doubt it very much. He was curious. And the Zine, the son of Moshe ben Yonan, me, was the one that he felt comfortable to ask this type of question. I answered him in a way I'll talk to you right now. I think you need to hear this. A Hasidic rabbi is willing to ask the question of Jesus in my father's mourning, and I get somehow portrayed as being a possible Jew, Jesus freak, or something of that nature. Far from it. The curiosity is very strange. And what about Rabbi Schneerson? I go to a Chabad shul, and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, Rabbi Wise of the Sherman Oaks Chabad House basically said, Gajantiv, whatever he says over there, B'Shem Adonenu, B'Shem Mashiachenu, and that's it, have a good Rosh Hashanah. You do not say the words in the name of our Lord, Adonenu, in the name of our Mashiach, unless you are a Messianic Jew. Am I going to claim that Rabbi Wise from the Sherman Oaks Chabad House complied Jesus? I doubt it very much. But the fact that he said Bisman Mashiachenu in the time of our Mashiach, there's no doubt in my mind that the figure he had in mind was Schneerson. There's no question of what's happening, a pink or poi, as we say in Yiddish, an upside down, downside world. where you have Hasidic followers who somehow feel that the Rebbe is done without a sire, which implies that there must be something mystical, magical, something powerful that's now being revealed. To the credit of Rabbi Mendel Schneerson, the man had a degree. He also went to the Sorbonne in France. He had no intent at all of being a Hasidic leader. He was drafted into it, you might say, by marriage. And as a result of being told by his Hasidic advisors to please divorce your wife and marry someone younger, he said, absolutely not. That's why there's no successor male child in the Schneerson dynasty, and that's why a story gets created. There must be a real reason for it. It's a hidden reason, something mysterious is coming back again, and on and on. If you're able to follow this type of logic, you've got a clue of how to look at Jesus. The Jesus fragmentation is what happens when stuff is not rational, and when disappointment occurs when our leader is not there. The Jesus of the New Testament has multiple titles, including the one that the Roman Catholic Church keeps alive, INRI, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen the INRI, and it blows me away. The Roman Catholic Church will not let go of a slogan found on the crucifix cross, according to the Gospel according to John, which has Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Why don't you say, Jesus the Christ of our faith? That's the phrase. It goes back to a Second Temple document. It was known as the Fourth Gospel, Gospel according to John. Jesus in the New Testament is referenced as even Mashiach. Jesus is referenced by other titles. But the mouth of Jesus says, what do you say? Not what I say. You said it. I didn't say it. So issues like King of the Jews, Messiah of the Jews, or higher titles like that are not said by the mouth of Jesus, as Ken implied. And if one needs the words on the mouth of Jesus, you ain't going to find it. Ain't going to find it. Ain't going to find it in the Brit Hadashah. And right away, Jews get disturbed. You mean to say, that's exactly what I said. You mean it's implied, that's exactly what I just intended. And let me give you the one verse. Only one verse, only one verse, only one verse even implies something of this nature. Admittedly, it was a plane flight here to Orlando after changing planes there in Tucson, Arizona. As if this is not a sign. I believe in signs, isn't that what we all do? I get on a plane by a go-go grandfather, Uber drive. I don't have Ubers, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I finally get to the airport, I get on my flight, and then we get to Phoenix, only 50 minutes before I make a connection to Orlando, and right away there's a trouble. Not with our plane, the plane that landed, and somehow, how are you going to get into the dispatch there, where you deplane, there's another plane before us, which had mechanical problems. I'm watching the clock, am I going to get to the other plane? Naturally, I get off, you reach my age, you got to go fishing a little bit. So I said, where's the shit will take? Where are the bathrooms? I finally find out there. I said, now where do I make my connection? Well, so you got to go here, you got to go. I said, what are you talking about? Where's the cart? What cart? Don't you have a cart? I'm a young man, but I still need, I huffed and puffed and eventually got there. That plane to Orlando, I don't exaggerate, ain't any magazine. Literally was waiting, about to close the door, when the last passenger, Prof.Zev.Garber, the professor, walks in with his Vulcan hat, walks in with his type of robust way, and I simply said, thank you for waiting. They said, we're waiting. I said, what do you mean, what's that? Your American Airlines landed there, I got a little blah. I walk into a plane, everybody sits there, looks at me. I look at everybody looking at me. I said, what's all this about? Where do I sit? Where do I put my luggage? And then the person who attended me, her name is Mary. And she said, I will help you. I said, what is your name, Mary? I said, fine, I'm Jesus. I said that, a plane just simply froze. Jesus is on board. I'm a wise guy, and everybody hears that word, Jesus. I could have simply said, Jesus, what the hell's going on with you? But you hear a word, but Mary was the one who attended. And when I got off the plane, I thanked Mary. Did she say, thank you, Jesus? No, she did not. It's just that she smiled and she was able to help me, and I was grateful the plane waited. It would have left. And then what would I have done? This is part of the presentation. The one verse that possibly suggests Jesus being more than, quote, Messiah or King or whatever, is a verse that's found, hardly known by anybody. If I have it marked correctly, I will call it to your attention. It's found somewhere. Let me see, I've got my little note here, and rather than go coming and hunting for it, let me see where it's found. Those who want the verse, which has its 1 Corinthians chapter 8. 1 Corinthians is not a better known book, it's one of the less known books associated with the Apostle Paul. Thank you for the light that went on. And essentially what you have are words that say about this. I will read you from the text itself. Chapter 8 of the book called 1 Corinthians, associated with the writings of Paul, the 4-line writings, and the words recorded. So then about eating food sacrificed to idols, we know, says Paul, that an idol is nothing at all in the world, and there is no God, there is no God, there is no God but one. I continue. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, or indeed as many gods and many lords, it says in brackets here, yet for us there is one God, listen carefully, yet for us, read the primary generation of Christians, if you choose to see it this way, there is one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live, and there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came, through whom we live. This is the only language you'll find in all the scriptures of the New Testament which borders upon the possibility of the association of something special above the humanity of Jesus. There is one God, referred to as the Father, and then there is one Lord, not Son, one Lord, Jesus Christ, and with Jesus is the complementary statement, through whom all things come and through whom we live. There are other verses that imply there's either Jew or Gentile, whatever, all the one in Christ Jesus, which is found multiple times, and on and on. The point is, did Jesus actually affirm this? Did he say this? Or are these words attributed about him? And I guess once you acknowledge these are things attributed about him, then you're into academic scholarship, then you're into the open door, then you're into the situation where you invite the Messianics who feel comfortable, even though they are more traditional with their belief articles. I think I need to read to you from a letter that was sent out maybe 4 weeks ago, right after Rosh Hashanah, more than that. It is a project which Zev.Garber is now involved in. It is extremely controversial. As a result of respect to who and what I represent, everybody, from the leadership of Hebrew Union College, from Michael Crook, New Testament professor, to Reformed rabbis of particular notes, each one of them has received this letter, and each one of them individually has said, hey, what are you doing? What exactly are you doing? I'll tell you what this letter is about. But before then, back in 1980s or whatever period, it was earlier than that, I gave a talk not realizing it was before a Messianic Jewish community. It was in a church, a Lutheran church in Burbank, California. At that particular audience was my rabbi of record at that time, Norman Pauper, what you call modern Orthodox rabbi. My second wife at the time, Michelle Kennedy, with her last name, not Jewish, convert to Orthodox Judaism, sitting with the Orthodox rabbi, and there was I. And among the people sitting there were students, two of my students, Esther Moshe Rosenberg, student of the names, as Jewish sounding, in which Esther basically asked the question, perhaps Professor Garber, you can tell us what you think about this and that bordering upon Jesus. I was a chairperson. I felt it wasn't my need or my position to even say anything about Jesus, but it was asked of me, and I gave me the opportunity. Among the words I used were nothing more than what Ken Hansen said to you in his introductory lecture. The word Mashiach, the word anointed, can be used by a number of individuals, including a non-Jew by the name of Cyrus, Koresh the Great, who was called a Mashiach, a Messiah, because of his redemptive power out of Iran somewhere, out of Persia, of when the Jews returned back from Babylonian exile. We reference in the book of Isaiah. I've got the text right here. The word Messiah deals with an office. It deals with an anointing ritual. It deals with oil, the equivalent of a president putting his hand on a scripture, whether it's the Torah, the New Testament, the Quran, whatever you have here. It means nothing more than a special anointed position with political ramifications in addition to spiritual, but not necessarily restricted or inclusive of spiritual. That's all Mashiach means. The Mashiach word in the Greek is Christos. And once you get a Greek word, like a Christ word, then that's special. But then there's another word called kurios. Kurios is the word Lord. And then there's another word called theos. And theos is the word for God. God is not Lord. Lord is not Mashiach. Excuse me? Let's repeat it again. 3 different words, 3 different implications, 3 different teachings. Messiah can be Jew and non-Jew. I use that term and probably said because a Los Angeles Times reporter was there in that audience, unknown to me, who reported the following announcement the next day in the newspaper: Orthodox professor claims Jesus could be Messiah. I can claim Bar Kokhba, I can claim Schneerson of later years. I didn't know about that newspaper article until a major rabbi of the largest Reformed temple west of Chicago, Wilshire Boulevard Temple. You cannot go to the West Coast without knowing Wilshire Boulevard Temple on Wilshire Boulevard. Major temple. Byzantine architecture. Members of that temple board were all the Hollywood bigwigs who would not use Jewish names, I might add, back in Hollywood's heyday in the 20s and 30s. All members of Wilshire Boulevard Temple were Rabbi Magnum, who lived 101 years, which tells me he had something special about it. Among his associate rabbis was the one ITA, teaching assistant at USC, Rabbi Alfred Wolf. German refugee from the Shoah, or before the Shoah, came here in 1939, I believe, was the major rabbi when Magnum could no longer be the major guy there, so Rabbi Wolf took over. I get a phone call from Rabbi Wolf, a Reformed rabbi. How you doing, Zev? Everything okay, Valley? Sure, Rabbi, what's going on with you? Zev, would you sit down? For what purpose? How you don't stand, first of all? Because you always stand. Rabbi Wolf said, you know you're being quoted, and you claim Jesus Messiah. That's what you're talking about. And then when he said that, I said, well, Rabbi, I said, Zev, everybody knows your knowledge. Of course you have a right to say what you said. But the fact that it's being printed in a newspaper and has the title Orthodox professor claims Jesus is Messiah, right away you're spinning something. Watch your words. Whereas my Orthodox father told me the first time I told him to give a talk to a college audience on Jesus, my very humble, very proper father told me in his nice little Bronx English over there, from the Yiddish background, watch what you say. I said, Tata Favus, for what reason do I have to watch what I say? Forget about the fancy schmancy academic university degrees. Listen to the language of the shtetl. My father simply said, you're talking to a college audience, you're going to hurt them. How much more so you're going to hurt them? That's why this write-up is correct. No matter what position you take, after 50 minutes of hearing rhetoric of this kind, your mind is going to change a little bit, for better or for worse, hopefully with the understanding of respecting differences. I know Jews, when they say Jesus, can't hardly say that word. I have in my very classroom. Her name is this. She has a Hebrew name now. She wears a babushka. She has 2 children. They are West Bank settlers. They're beautiful kids. I got her with a daughter-in-law a year and a half ago. She still comes to class because she has to take classes with me. She is married to an Okie. I say Okie, that's the term we use, I guess, for Oklahoma. He ain't Jewish. She's so frum right now. I bring to class last week a book I just reviewed in Garrett, newsletter of Professor Hebrew, Israeli Jewish Art on Jesus, which had an exhibit for the first time in 2017 at the Israeli Museum. They're bringing Jesus to the Israeli Museum. Are you crazy? First time the state of Israel was sponsoring in its national museum a whole art display on Jesus. And I see pictures of guys with yarmulkes walking around, seeing the pictures. And one of the pictures has 12 Israeli soldiers. Good-looking IDF soldiers. Smoking. Israelis smoke. I don't know what that means. I said, so you're talking to an ex-Mossadnik, which I told him about. That's all you need to know. All I can tell you is smoking in Israeli uniform, 8 kilo. It's not prohibited. That doesn't look right. This is Israeli 12 disciples. And Jesus, the clean-cut Jesus there, looks at him. My student won't look at it. She said no. I said, what's your problem? She says, I don't want to see this. Another photograph has the baby Jesus wrapped up in a tallis held by her mother, who's dressed in a black velvet, black dress, and no different than my student Laura, who's dressed in kind of neat uniform. She can't see a Jesus baby wrapped in a tallis. If the babe is Jewish, then how much more so should we Gentile Christians be uptight in portraying Jesus wearing a prayer shawl like this? You think you Jews have a problem? Imagine what the Gentile Christian may have once he's told what this prayer shawl represents. And that's the whole point. You have an impact, let the pieces fall, and then you'll discover all kinds of things. For example, this particular book has this picture. I originally wanted the Chagall with the prayer shawl being the the crucifixion line of Jesus. It was already copyrighted. We got this one. It's drawn by a Catholic author, by the way, a Catholic painter. It also is not factual. No, this is how you teach. It looks neat. It looks like a Sephardic synagogue. That's the first thing that's not factual. You got the men sitting upstairs, the men sitting downstairs. Where the hell are the women? Upstairs are the Zerat Mashir. The women should sit upstairs. You got a very handsome Jesus being called up to the Torah, and the Torah from which he's reading from is clearly a Sephardic Torah scroll. Back in the day with the Dead Sea Scrolls, all you had was a scroll. You didn't have a nice particular stuff that looks like this, and no doubt the reason for it is that the artist, a French Catholic artist in the late 19th century, goes around, sees different synagogues, and this is what he sees, and this is what he captures, and this is what comes across to many people what Jesus must have looked like walking around with a garment of tassels, which is mentioned, by the way, in the New Testament. The picture is deceptive, but the picture is real, and let me explain why. In Garber's methodology, there are 2 words I learned a long time ago. Nobody uses it, so I'll be clean with it. Factuals and actuals. What you're looking for in any discussion that's particularly controversial are facts as facts are facts. You ain't going to get that. What you're going to get is interpretation. What you're going to get is retranslations. What you're going to get is something that reflects more where you're coming from, and therefore more relevant to where you're from and from whence you're speaking. You cannot use first century type of language when it comes to even a verse of scripture and assume that that's exactly what it means. No, it does not. When a ringing of an iPod by a cellular professor now asked to walk out, this is the reality that you live. It's not embarrassing at all. In my day, you used to click off on the iPod, but no, we've got to go outside. Don't you see how contaminating that thing is? You all depend upon this little thing here.
That's right.
You can't go to sleep without it, you can't wake up without it. I think you get my point. The factuality is we all agree on that. The reality is we don't abide by it. We live by actualities. The actuality is what we're talking about. When you talk about the Jewish Jesus and the Reclamation, this is Zev.Garber's serious attempt by himself and by others who contributed, both Jews and non-Jews, for the reclamation, for reclaiming Jesus, for a serious topic within Jewish circles. There is an NPR interview with me. When you finish the impact I give you now, you go online. And my granddaddy's in this classroom. Don't tell me you don't know how to use a computer. I am probably older than everybody sitting here. Don't let the face and appearance tell you differently. I know you're 88 years old. What makes you say I'm not older than 88? You can't be older than 88. What makes you say? Well, you don't look older. Well, maybe I'm in good health. But you get appearances can be very deceptive. And I think as we get older, the more we feel vulnerable, and maybe that's part of it, because part of the Jesus, Jewish Jesus, is not, in my opinion, an issue for Jews. It is a definitive issue for Christians. Let me repeat that point. When you talk about a Jewish Jesus, you ain't challenging Jews. You are disturbing Christians. And when you disturb Christians, why don't they get it? They just don't. The Inri, they just don't. The Prayashal, they just don't. And I'll give you good examples that have happened in my encounter with Christian leaders. Not lay people, with Christian leaders.